4 billion years ago, there were two planets in this solar system where you might have stood on solid ground, looked up, and watched clouds drift over liquid water. One of them was Venus. The other one wasn't Earth. Because here's the part almost nobody tells you. 4 billion years ago, Earth was the hostile one. Our planet was a bombarded, half-molten world with a poisonous sky and very little we'd recognize as comfortable. Meanwhile, next door, Venus may have been the calm one, the gentle one, the world with shallow oceans and a mild climate. If an alien spacecraft had flown through our solar system back then, and someone aboard had to bet on which of these two rocky planets would be covered in life billions of years later, the smart money would not obviously have been on Earth. It might have been on Venus. They would have lost that bet in the most dramatic way imaginable. This is the story of how the most promising planet in the solar system became the most hostile, and why scientists still argue about exactly what killed it. Start with how alike Venus and Earth really are. Because the word twin gets thrown around loosely, and here it's almost literal. Venus is almost the same size as Earth, almost the same mass. Made of the same rock and metal, formed in the same neighborhood of the early solar system, out of the same swirling material. If you held them side by side as newborn planets, you would struggle to say which one would become paradise and which would become a furnace. And according to climate models from scientists at NASA, Venus may have stayed comfortable for an astonishingly long time, not millions of years, possibly 2 to 3 billion years of shallow oceans and mild temperatures. For comparison, animals and plants have only existed on Earth for around 600 million years. So Venus may have been a calm, watery world for several times longer than Earth has had anything you could see with the naked eye. It wasn't briefly nice. It was a livable planet for most of the history of this solar system. So how do we even know Venus had water, if its oceans are long gone and the surface today is dry as a furnace floor? This is the clever part. And it's a question people genuinely ask. When you study Venus's atmosphere now, you find a chemical fingerprint left behind. There's a heavy version of hydrogen, and on Venus it's enormously concentrated compared to the ordinary kind. That specific imbalance is exactly what you'd expect if a planet once had a vast amount of water that got broken apart, with the lightest pieces escaping into space and the heavy leftovers staying behind. Venus is wearing the chemical scar of an ocean that disappeared. The water was there. We can still read its ghost in the air. So what killed it? This is where it stops being a gentle comparison and becomes a murder case with more than one suspect. The first suspect is volcanoes. At some point in Venus's past, enormous regions of the planet appear to have flooded with lava on a scale Earth has rarely matched. When that much rock erupts, it releases gigantic amounts of carbon dioxide. On Earth, carbon dioxide is the gas that traps heat and keeps a planet warm enough to live on. A little of it keeps you cozy. Too much of it cooks you. Venus got far, far too much. And here's the deadly trick, the part that makes this a horror story instead of just a weather report. As the air trapped more heat, the oceans began to evaporate. Water vapor in the sky also traps heat. So hotter air created more vapor, and more vapor created hotter air, each one feeding the other, faster and faster, like a fire that generates its own wind. Scientists call this a runaway greenhouse, and runaway means exactly what it sounds like. Once it started, nothing on the planet could stop it. The oceans didn't slowly shrink and stabilize. They boiled into the sky, the water was torn apart by sunlight, and the lightest pieces drifted off into space, gone permanently, with no way back. But there's a second suspect, and the audience for this topic always raises it because it's a strange and haunting fact. Venus has no moon. Earth does. And our moon is not just a light in the sky. Its steady gravitational pull helps stabilize Earth's spin and may help keep our planet's interior churning, and that churning is what generates Earth's magnetic field. That field is invisible armor. It deflects the relentless stream of charged particles blasting off the sun, the solar wind, which would otherwise erode a planet's atmosphere over long stretches of time. Venus barely spins at all. A single day on Venus lasts longer than its entire year. With that painfully slow rotation and no large moon to steady it, Venus never built a strong magnetic shield of its own. Some scientists believe that left it standing in the sun's wind with no protection, slowly losing whatever water and air it had left. So which was it? The volcanoes that cooked it from the inside, or the missing shield that left it exposed from the outside? The honest answer is that scientists do not fully agree, and that disagreement is real, not invented for drama. Both processes almost certainly played a role. The exact order of events, which one struck first and which one delivered the killing blow, is still genuinely debated today, which is precisely why people wanted to go and stand at the crime scene themselves. And going to look is one of the bravest, most stubborn stories in the entire history of exploration. In the 1960s and 70s, the Soviet Union became obsessed with Venus. They launched mission after mission, all under the name Venera, and at the start they failed almost every time. Some probes lost contact on the way. Some went silent the moment they hit the atmosphere. Some were simply crushed before they ever reached the ground, because nobody yet understood how violent the surface truly was. The air on Venus is so heavy and dense that standing on the surface would feel like being almost a kilometer deep in the ocean. It flattened early spacecraft the way a boot flattens an empty can. Mission after mission. The Soviets sent machines into that and lost them, and mission after mission, they built another one and tried again. Then it paid off. In 1970, Venera 7 became the first machine humans ever successfully landed on another planet. It struck the surface, probably tipped onto its side, and managed to send a faint signal for about 23 minutes before the heat silenced it forever. 23 minutes. That was the entire reward for years of failure and effort. And then, in 1975, Venera 9 did something that still feels impossible today. It sent home a photograph. An actual picture taken from the surface of another world, the first one in human history. A bleak, rocky plain stretching toward a dim horizon under a heavy sky. The camera survived in heat that melts lead and pressure that crushes submarines, and it lasted just long enough to show us the crime scene before it too died. That is what Venus does. It lets you look for a moment, and then it destroys whatever you sent to look. For decades after that, the case went quiet. Venus became the planet we had given up on, the dead twin, the warning sign you drive past, and then recently the cold case cracked open again. In 2023, scientists went back through old radar data from a NASA spacecraft called Magellan, gathered in the early 1990s. Comparing images of the same volcano taken months apart, they spotted a vent that had changed shape and grown between the two passes. That meant only one thing. Venus is not a dead world. It has volcanoes erupting right now, today, beneath those clouds. Whatever process helped kill Venus billions of years ago, the engine behind it never fully switched off. And then there's the strangest twist of all. In 2020, a team of scientists announced they had detected a gas called phosphine high in Venus's clouds, a gas that on Earth is produced almost entirely by living things. The claim was explosive and was immediately challenged. Other researchers said it was likely a mistake, a different chemical being misread. The original team pushed back and stood by their data. Years later, the argument still isn't fully settled. Nobody serious is claiming there is life on Venus. But the fact that careful scientists are still arguing about it at all, over the very planet we wrote off as hell, tells you how little we truly understand the place. Which is exactly why Venus is about to get crowded again. After being ignored for a generation, NASA is sending 2 missions back. One, called Da Vinci, will drop a probe straight down through the atmosphere, sampling the air the whole way to the ground. Another, called Veritas, will map the surface in detail to read its volcanic past. Europe is sending its own mission too, called Envision. For the first time in decades, we are returning to the crime scene with modern tools and modern eyes. And here is the thought worth sitting with after everything else fades. Venus and Earth began as near-identical twins, born together, built from the same material, given the same starting conditions. One of them became the only living world we have ever found. The other became a furnace where the rain is acid and the ground is hot enough to melt metal. The thing that separated those two destinies is not science fiction and not magic. It is a sequence of ordinary physical events that happen to one rocky planet and not the other. We don't need to imagine a dead alien world somewhere across the galaxy. There is 190 million kilometers away. It has been sitting there quietly the entire time, holding the answer to a question we are only now brave enough to ask. Venus was supposed to be the success story, a second living planet right next door. Instead, it became a sealed warning, written in heat and pressure and a vanished ocean. We're finally going back to read what it says. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.